Hello, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And you are going to love this episode. I have the most amazing guest, and I swear we must be sisters from another mister because we are on the same mission to empower people as they mature. Her name is Ande Lyons, and she is a pro aging advocate who is shattering ageism through her podcast called Don't Be Caged by Your Age, where she helps people thrive after 65. Ande firmly believes that pastures are for horses, not humans. And at the vibrant age of 69, she is making it her mission to represent that life isn't over until you're dead. Ande helps folks dissolve the internalized ageist beliefs so they can fuel their passion, purpose, and pocketbook after 65 and beyond. Ande, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, Cheryl, I am so happy to be here. And hi, listener. Hope you're ready for some nice pro aging insights and advice.
I just love that message, the pro aging, because everything's, oh, anti aging this, anti aging that. And it's like, well, how could I be anti aging if I want to live at least another 20, 30, maybe even 40 years?
Right.
You've got
It's
to
all,
embrace it.
there's so many messages out there that basically tell you, look, if you can't look young, get
Mm-hmm.
out, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
want to see you. We don't want to hear from you. Everything is youth centered instead of seasoned centered.
Mm-hmm.
So we have so many years of lived experiences that make us this incredible human that is valuable. And yet here we are, afraid to let anybody know our age. And so I'm always asking people, age out loud and proud. I actually hand out buttons that have that on that because so often, again, who wants to put it out to the world because we may be shamed or blamed or kicked out or
Mm-hmm.
ignored? There's so many things that society and institutions, but more importantly, and this is where what I focus on the podcast, Cheryl, are those indoctrinated,
Mm-hmm.
internalized ageist beliefs that keep telling us we are too old to do that. And for all the right reasons, because when you and I were kids,
Mm-hmm.
the people who were 60, 65 were more aged by
Mm-hmm.
life. And they looked, shoulders were hunched. They might have lived another 5 years. Occasionally, you knew someone who lived to 75 or 85,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly, they were moving very slowly. So we have that indoctrinated. And for me, I want to showcase folks like you, like me, who are out doing things, visible in front of cameras, talking to
Mm-hmm.
people who have found a way to fuel their passion, purpose, and pocketbook. And so that those who have retired and are feeling lonely and isolated and unworthy and missing that sense of connection and community, but more important, the loss of bringing themselves to the world, their capabilities. I want them to see, well, look what she did, look what he did. You
Mm-hmm.
can do that too.
Mm-hmm. I think that society also plays a part here. Maybe even in the medical field and even the health, air quotes here, experts of what we can and cannot do after we turn a certain age. And they're all ready to say, no, you can't do that because you're too old. You can't do that. You might get hurt. You can't do this. And when you hear those messages over and over and over again from the experts, it's easy to just say, well, they know best. I mean, I guess I'll accept that. But then you get people like yourself and people like me. I was told at the age of 36, I was a chronic pain patient. And I was told I was never going to recover. I was going to have to live with that pain for the rest of my life. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. And I'm going, this doesn't sound right because you're not doing a very good job now. I just keep getting worse and worse. And finally, when one of my doctors told me, that I was never going to have the life that I had before. I would never, be able to work full time again, all these things that I was never going to be able to do. I was 36.
Oh, you got a death sentence.
Exactly. And I looked at her and I said, "You don't understand. I'm planning on going back to ballet class." And she laughed in my face and looked at me and says, "You don't understand. You are a chronic pain patient. You will always be a chronic pain patient. You will never have the life you had before." Then she told me that I needed to start applying for disability because I was going to need it.
Oh
And
my
I went
gosh.
home and I hit rock bottom. And then I guess that incomparable stubbornness eventually came to the forefront. And I was like, wait a minute.
Well, and also, I would say fierce problem solver.
Thank you. Yeah,
Because, like, this is,
they
I
do
got a
kind of go
problem
hand in
here,
hand.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to solve this because this is not what I want. And I love that about you, Cheryl.
And that's exactly what I said to myself. It's like, this is your responsibility, not them. They're making you worse. You have to figure this out on your own. And as somebody who was trained as a medical professional, that was really a hard, nut to crack in my own belief system. And
Right.
I did it. I fired my entire medical team, much to their dismay, and no, you need us, and yeah, I don't need you. Stop taking the medications and stop doing the stupid exercises and stretches that the PTs gave me. And I can say that because I am a PT. It was just dumb. And so I just started teaching myself through self exploration how to move without exacerbating the pain. And I did add acupuncture to the list, which was another big stepping
Yay.
stone. And 6 months later, I was out of pain.
Oh
And
my
how many?
gosh.
Okay, 36. So that was how many years ago?
Yeah.
34, whatever. I
Yeah.
can't do
So, yeah,
math.
it was during the 80s where
Yeah.
we weren't emancipated yet as
Right.
women to have a
Right.
voice, to go up against the authority of the
Right.
medical establishment. But and you have some fierce genes in you. You've got a good combo there. You do not take no for an answer.
No, I don't. And now I have the skills too to kind of emphasize it, with my tools and stuff. But yeah, and if I had listened to her and taken that in, as a belief, okay, this is going to be my life. Imagine what my life would be like now.
Right.
And I talk about it a lot when I am guests on somebody else's show because you don't have to take that as, a definite diagnosis, prognosis, whatever. Question them. I mean, at this point,
Absolutely.
here I
And
am.
so
I'm 69 and I'm still, taking ballet classes. I'm pole dancing. You can do whatever you want to do.
Well, here was a real shocker to me. I went skippity doo dah into my 65th year, went to my annual physical, just like I did when I was 64, and I'm now on Medicare. And so my doctor, I don't get undressed. We have a light conversation. It's called a wellness visit. Um, and she sort of pats me on the shoulder, and that's it. And I leave going, wait, what happened between 64 and 65? And I said, why is it all of a sudden nobody's checking, ordering tests? What do we want to do? How do we want to stage the next 30, 40 years for you, Mrs. Lyons? Right? And to make sure that you stay healthy and strong. Should we get you a memory test? Let's get you a hearing test. Let's get this. Nothing. And I thought, and I had a lot going on in life. I said, well, oh, well, right. And then I went to 60, my 66 and yeah, annual physical, same thing, 67. And I thought, that's when I started getting upset. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm having to order my own mammograms if I want one, my own colonoscopies. What's going on here? And I have MedX, which is a great backup insurance.
Hmm.
And finally, I dig into it. And I send her a letter, an email, and I said, look, if we're going to continue working together, you have got to stop doing this gendered ageism in the medical world. But what I did learn, Cheryl, was that when we turn 65 and we go on Medicare, it doesn't matter if you have the gold standard of backup
Hmm.
medical
Hmm.
insurance. They no longer do physicals. That's it. So I did a recent episode and a whole post on what tests you need to ask for and insist on after the age of 65. You want to get your barometer checked. You want to get where are
Wow.
you at now? What do you need to stay on top of? Because they will not do this. They stop treating you. And in fact, I even asked her, I said, I need you to think I'm 42, which is a real ageist comment. But I need you to stop this I'm 65 plus attitude with me. And boy, when I went into that annual exam, she was all ready for me. She had referrals ready to go. We talked about my list of the tests because I told her
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming in with a list. And she couldn't have been more proactive.
Mm-hmm.
But so many other older adults will go in and think this is it. And like you did with your medical
Mm-hmm.
team, we have to, us seasoned citizens, have to take charge of our medical care and insist on the memory tests and the vision tests. I had a woman on the show who I think she was maybe 68. She's a physical therapist, PhD, and woke up one night with a problem with one of her eyes that was so severe. She almost lost her sight in that eye. But
Oh.
you know what? She hadn't had a vision exam in years. It took her forever to get an eye doctor. So I'm going to tell everybody right now, be sure to get your eyes examined every year and have that ophthalmologist in your Rolodex, as we used to
Mm-hmm.
say,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that was the hardest thing she had to deal with to get this horrible eye condition taken care of. So, we just have to stay on top of that. And, who wants that extra burden? But it was such a night and day experience, Cheryl, of the care I got right up through 64 to a pat on the back. And did she even listen to my heart? I don't know.
And this was the same physician you had
Yeah,
been seeing.
yeah.
Did she think that you wouldn't notice?
You know? And honestly, it took me a while to go, say what? And it was, yeah, and so I, blame myself for not jumping on the my own bandwagon faster
Mm-hmm.
because I, like you, am a fierce problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did, and I just can't shout it from the mountaintops enough to older adults. Do not take that annual wellness because, again, even the gold standard insurance, you cannot get the traditional physical and get it covered.
Wow. I did not know that, and I have to confess, I really rarely go to the doctor just because of my own personal experiences
Yes,
along the
understood.
way.
Yeah,
And it's like, you know what? If I know something's really not right, so I'll don't call me, I'll call you. Is kind of
right.
like my attitude, and I always do have like either a naturopath or a holistic type of practitioner on the side too, just as far as, confirmation and, alternatives,
Absolutely.
because you need to have options rather than somebody saying you absolutely have to do this.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those things you really have to be very proactive. And one thing I love about being older is that we are less intimidated and we are less likely to kind of like either keep our mouths shut or cower or not use our voice, and it's like, I've been here for 69 years, you better listen to me.
Most of us hopefully are like that. But I do worry about the folks who might be less inclined to be confrontational.
Well, and for those people, if for those of you who are listening, if you think you might fall into that category, don't worry about it, it's okay. Get a buddy. Get a buddy who will be
Absolutely. That's one
able
of the
to
things
stand up. Yep.
I talk about with my list is take someone with you.
Mm-hmm.
And look, it's kind of like me when I go to see a mechanic. I'll bring a dude, I'll take someone right off the street. I'm not going to get the same attention as a woman than a man is going to get in fixing something with a
Right.
car.
Right.
It's just unfortunate with that bias. But same thing with the medical world. You can bring someone with you and they
Mm-hmm.
can be there to take notes.
Mm-hmm.
So that so that you feel that level of support. But go to don'tbecagedbyyourage.com. You'll see it right under the post blog navigation and the navigation bar, the tab blog, and you'll find it right there. What tests and the questions you want to ask. So it's not just a list of the tests, it's how do you have that conversation with your doctor? And what are the questions to ask? And that's so important too, to sometimes have to go in there with a script.
Yeah. Okay. Say that again. Go to.
Don't be caged by your age.com. And it's on the tab that says blog. It's right there. Uh, the tests you need after you turn 65.
And I'm going to go a step farther, if I may, in regards to taking notes and all that. That the episode that I did just prior to yours was this delightful woman who actually had like a trifecta of cancer.
Wow.
She had stage 3 or 4 triple positive breast cancer, and then a few years later, basal cell carcinoma, which is probably one of the best to have. And then the third one, I think, was thyroid cancer.
Whew.
And man, she says, yeah, you ask those questions, you take notes. And she says, you can even record,
Yeah,
your visits in the doctor's office. And when she went to record the one of her office visits, and the doctor was like, no, you can't do that. That's HIPAA. And she says, oh, no, you can't do it, but I can record you. I mean, this woman
absolutely.
was just, she's on fire. And it was just
Nicely said. You
very
absolutely
strong
can.
advocate.
I
Hmm.
love that.
Yes. So, anyway, yeah, I mean, you have got to speak for yourself. And especially, again, as seasoned citizens, um, it's not like we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
We've made it this far. So, yeah, don't talk down to me because it's not going to go well. So then tell us how you got into podcasting, because as far as I'm concerned, you are like the queen of podcasts. You've had what, 6 of them? And what
Right.
made you start your first one? And then how did this snowball just kind of keep
My
rolling?
goodness. That is such a great question because I have to go back in time to 2012 when I was had a platform that was helping long-term couples stay tuned in and turned on to each other because sometimes the romance and the intimacy can fade after you've been with
Hmm.
someone for decades, especially if you've raised kids with them. And so how do you keep that intimacy going and especially for women,
Hmm.
talking about their desires. And I knew that this new way of reaching people, of increasing brand awareness that was called podcasting, would be a good fit for me.
Hmm.
And I set it up as interview because I do love to interview folks. But boy, for the first 52 weeks, I had a producer because I was actually knee shaking for 52 episodes in a row. But after that, I was fine. I said, this is great. I'm on my own now. I went over to Blog Talk Radio and where I had my show, I self produced. And
Hmm.
then I was on Blab for a minute and then used, some other platforms, StreamYard for years. And now I'm on Riverside. It's been so much fun watching how the technology has come such a long way because at the same time I also was heavily involved with Google Plus where we were doing
Mm.
live streaming all the time and I would interview people live talking about all that salty stuff, that sexy stuff that one can talk about when they're talking about bringing back desire. And that was a fascinating world too, to be there live, streaming on Google Plus and YouTube, and having conversations with people and interviewing them. And frankly, I really have been waiting decades for this opportunity because when video cameras first came out, I noticed that I enjoyed talking to the video camera. And so, but what was I going to do? 1984, 85, 86, go down to the local TV station and try to get a job? No, that
Yeah,
was
good luck. Hmm.
never going to happen. So, needless to say, I was delighted by all of this. But podcasting is a wonderful way to not just increase brand awareness, practice your speaking skills, but also enter new industries. So when Bring Back Desire was wrapping up was because I was getting so tired of all the horrible advice online for launching businesses. I had had a venture-backed.com business. I'd had a wonderful food manufacturing business and I'm watching and I have my MBA And I'm watching all this advice going, no, 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 no. Nobody's talking about value proposition, MVP. Nobody's talking about
Mm-hmm.
all the important numbers that you need to have an understanding of business. So I started focusing on business and ended up with my third podcast called, I think that was my fourth podcast called Startup Life. I decided to focus on newly minted startup founders. And that was a lot of fun. And I interviewed diverse founders from around the world with some pretty complicated businesses. But
Wow.
I was also a global startup mentor and judge at pitch events and worked with a lot of accelerator programs. And then for 3 years here in Boston, I had a monthly pitch event for startup founders. And so that's what led to my whole coming out about my age, because I'd be in a room of, 75 to 100 folks, many of them under the age of 40.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have, five founders take 99 seconds to pitch their business to this audience. Plus, I'd always have a couple of investors there to uh, provide deeper questions to the founders. And I would always hear, it was well meaning, but I'd always hear someone ask, well, you really need to be able to explain your business as if you were telling your grandma. And I kept going
Hmm.
like, where is that coming from? That's gendered ageism. And I wanted to jump up and say, we were building tech companies in the 70s. Our generation is not tech challenged. We're tech legends, where we have gone from dial rotary phones to where we are today. In fact, the fact that we nailed the cassette tape answering machine in
Mm-hmm.
the early 80s says a lot for how incredibly brilliant we are. But we went from slide rules to calculators. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have had to adjust. We had to learn about this thing called the Xerox copier and then train other people on how to use it. We had to learn how to do the punched hole printers and then the ones with ink that you got all over yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what we've transitioned from transistor radios to Walkman to iPods to smartphones. I mean, so I would always be a little insulted. And then I kept getting the vibe that everybody thought I was in my early 50s. And I was at the time 64, 65. And I thought, oh my God, what are they going to say when they find out I'm this friggin'
Mm-hmm.
old? So when I turned 66, I said, I got to come out about my age. I just have to rip the duct tape off. And so I got that US Route 66 sign
Mm-hmm.
and held it up in front of me and took a photo. And honestly, Cheryl, the look on my face, it looks like I'm going, will you still love me and like me and respect me
Aw.
now that you know I'm this old? But I titled the post on LinkedIn because, wow, coming out about your age on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it was called Don't Be Caged by Your Age. And I talked about ageism in the tech industry. I talked about how hard it is to let people know your age, how hard it is to even get a job after the age of 65, given the institutional ageism. And I just wanted to get an idea. What do you all think? Well, the post went viral, and the comments were so fascinating.
Oh.
Some people who had figured it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And went on to do amazing things, and other people who were suffering because they could not keep doing the work that they loved because someone made a decision that because the clock struck midnight on a
Mm-hmm.
milestone age, 65, that they were done. Or the fact that they were 55, they lost ambition. Or if they were in a PR advertising firm, we can't have people over 50 here.
Oh,
Why
jeez.
not? Especially if you're a woman. So, the stories were just heartbreaking. And that's when I knew that I needed to do this podcast and enter the pro aging industry,
Mm-hmm.
which brings me back to podcasting because as a startup mentor and coach, it was very easy for me to talk to these founders, ask all these great questions. It made me a better coach that people were paying for, a better mentor, and judge at pitching events. But it also got the word out because they'd talk amongst themselves or people would see the podcast. And so my visibility and my expertise and my status was raised because I had a podcast. Also, when I entered the pro aging world, I didn't know anything about pro aging. So I made sure that my first 20 guests were some of the best thought leaders in pro aging. And that upped my game and understanding, well, what are we really talking about here? And then by episode 50 or 60, maybe, I was considered a thought leader in the pro aging space. That
Nice.
was, a year later.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes very little time. And I love it, especially for our age group, because, okay, we're up against the institutional ageism, can't get that job. Well, maybe by interviewing people, I get more of a consulting type
Mm-hmm.
expertise where corporations are happy to bring you on as a 1099
Mm-hmm.
freelancer consultant to add to their teams, make them more intergenerational. Studies show intergenerational teams are more successful and profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there. And so this way, folks can find a way to get into a new industry, a new talent they might want to unfold. Maybe they want to become the next best flower arranger. So they start interviewing flower arrangers, right? Or florists. Or they want to become the next best fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
Launch a podcast, start interviewing people in that field. It ups your game, it ups your visibility, and the podcast is social proof because you
Mm-hmm.
can put it on the social media platforms. When people Google you and research you, they find you right there with a podcast. And although many people don't know what goes into a podcast to make it happen, they do have an appreciation that it must take time
Mm-hmm.
and some talent to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I have to go back to just one comment I wanted to make about, I do want to say, I have to make this point. I still sometimes do miss the rotary phone. Okay. And then just listening to you talk about, shaking in your boots as you're doing your podcast. I mean, I went through that. Oh my gosh, it was just terrible. So, but once you get going, once you get your rhythm, then it starts to relax, it starts to flow. So anybody out there, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, you know, the one thing you have to remember is to be consistent
Right.
and don't expect to have 20,000 listeners right away. It takes a while to build an audience, but it is worth it. And you're right, everything that you said, including the speaking skills and improving your confidence and
Oh
the
my gosh.
amount of people
And
you
then
meet.
in 2020, when we got shut down for COVID and we got shut down early here in Boston, I knew as an extrovert I'd need to get my battery juiced up. So I decided to take my podcast live twice a week across
Wow.
LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch.
Hmm.
And so even though I was a seasoned podcaster, I'd never gone live like that before, where I
Hmm.
had to be prepared to talk about some pretty tough topics, tech companies, things like that. And people are watching you, and there's no editing.
Mm-mm.
Wow. That's an incredible experience. And I did that twice a week for 3 years.
Wow. And see, that was something that I was going to ask you a little bit earlier, because when you were saying how nervous you were, the knees knocking and all that, and when you started telling us that you were doing them, then you went to doing online podcasts. It was like, oh my God, how did you feel doing like your first couple of online
Oh my
shows?
gosh.
Because that's
You
terrifying.
Yeah, you have to bring a lot of grace. What I do love about going live, I could go live right now, is that you are in your body. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens, you have to go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I would find that people who were speakers who would come on, they were really nervous because they had their speaking gig, down, memorized, pat, but speaking extemporaneously like this, not so easy. Not
Mm-hmm.
only that, you're managing the technology. And when you're live, you're answering questions from the live audience. So you see their comments coming here. So you've got to
Mm-hmm.
somehow, incorporate that into the conversation and pop their questions up on the screen and get, your guest to answer those questions. But also, there are times when there were crickets. Nobody was watching. And you still had to be able to feel good about that. And
Mm-hmm.
and of course, I turned every episode into an episode. So every live thing, I would just boom, pop it
Mm-hmm.
up, and it would become a podcast that people could listen to. But to the downloads, let me tell you, and I run a monthly uh, indie podcaster event. I've been doing that for 2 years, almost 2 years now, for New England podcasters and more. But this is the thing that we talk about all the time, is this vanity metrics, which is, oh, I've got 1,000 downloads, or I'm in the top 1%, or I'm this, I'm that. I ask everyone to go into a room with 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, and they're all listening to you. Come on. Once a week, if you're dropping an episode once a week, that's 200 people glued to what you're saying a month. To me, that is a win. It's a huge win. And if you're doing your podcast so that it leads to brand awareness or the work and product or service that you're selling, that can become the best funnel for your business. You could have a conversation with your guest or have a listener resonate. So maybe your guest buys your services or a listener buys your services. There's no other way that you can get your name and your brand out in the world better than podcasting. And what's the big deal about 1,000 downloads? I mean, really, what's the big deal? Or 5,000 or 10,000? I mean, what, you going to go stand in a big convention center and talk to all the, no, I mean, it's just as valuable. Now, if you wanted to monetize that podcast, 200 downloads per episode, plenty to get a sponsor. Plenty. Sponsors are looking for the niche audience you're talking to, and they're seeking somebody who's bringing good content to the people that they want to reach.
Excellent. So, what would you say to the listeners who are, okay, they're mulling this around in their heads thinking, yeah, but could I really do it? I mean, what would be the first step to try and, overcome that imposter syndrome, or that I'm not good enough, or I'd never be able to figure it out? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, whose voice is that?
Mm-hmm.
Who told you at some point in your life, we don't want to hear you, you're stupid, you're not worthy, you got nothing to say?
Mm-hmm.
So identify who first told you that. Maybe many people over the years. We all have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you understand, first of all, that that is a voice that you want to say, thank you for sharing and hold my hand because we're going to be doing this. Then I invite you to close your eyes, turn on the mic, turn on the camera, hit record, close your eyes and just start talking. Hear your voice, hear how you are resonating. Talk about something you're passionate about, that you're excited about, that you're hurt by, whatever, that you're sad about. Just start talking. And then do that with your eyes open and play it back. And all of a sudden, you're going to get very comfortable with hearing your true, authentic voice. Not someone else's, not, hey, you're here listening to Cheryl and Andy, that kind of stuff. You can be the biggest introvert and be very successful. And Seth Godin, who has been a brilliant marketing guy for decades, one of my favorite quotes of his is, sure, it's been done before, but not by you and not for us. And so if anybody studied human design, you know that we all resonate differently, which means you're going to walk through the salad bar, and when you're done compiling your salad, there's nobody else is going to have a salad like yours, right? So we just have to remember that we are unique. And then you start practicing, and you can practice with a friend. Hey, yeah, I've used Shannon Hernandez several times to start launch a new podcast because I know he's such a great guest. Get someone who's really seasoned as your first guest. Give me a call. I'll help you out. I'll be one of your first guests because we will hold your hand. We'll make it easy. We can help keep the conversation going. We know how this works while you find your rhythm. And also bring some grace to what you're doing. And this is the challenge of any adult. you wouldn't hit a kid up saying, "What do you mean you don't know how to hit a home run yet? What do you mean you don't know how to do that figure eight on your skates yet? What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean you're not pirouetting across the dance floor? You've been at this once,
Mm-hmm.
maybe twice, right?" We got to be okay being a beginner
Mm-hmm.
and just say, "You know what? I'm building my pro here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, getting my expert status with a new form of technology and a way of delivering my message
Mm-hmm.
to folks." And just know that I'm going to do 20 episodes. And at 20 episodes, I am going to sit back and go, "Do I like this? Is this a
Mm-hmm.
good use of my time and energy?" And then you can say, "Okay, it is. And I can see how it's working." I suggest go to at least 50 episodes, but 20 is a good time to just sort of stop and saying, "How am I feeling about all this?" Pat yourself on the back
Mm-hmm.
because you have learned how to, if you are not hiring someone, you've learned how to edit and you've learned how to upload it to a platform and created artwork for it. You've done all the fun things because it really is a creative outlet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, come join a podcasting group like mine because the support from indie podcasters is so wonderful. And that's why 2 years ago, Cheryl, I launched the New England Podcasters Group. One, selfishly because I wanted to meet folks. And, as we get older, it gets a little tougher because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, who do we want to hang out with, right? Um, so it became like one of the best things I ever did. Podcasters are so much fun, whether they're talking about paranormal or FemNinja or uh, baking, Italian food, raising kids, whatever. They're all passionate about what they're talking about. And so you feel right at home, whereas your family and friends love you, but they're like, "Okay, that's nice." I don't know what you're doing.
And there are so many different topics and subjects to talk about. So I'm glad that you were listing all of those because yeah, the possibilities are endless of
Oh
what
my
you can talk
gosh.
about. But I do want to just add one little thing that when I first started podcasting, and I told you the story before we recorded, one little tidbit that was shared with us was, and just so you know, everybody hates the sound of their own voice,
Yes.
but you will get used to it.
Yes, it's you. And you can sound like Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter. There are people out there that want to hear that. They do.
Absolutely.
It does not
Absolutely.
matter. It's what you're saying and how you're bringing it and how you're vibing for the people. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're like overwhelmed by the technology, and nowadays, after you pay maybe $100 for a good mic and $100 for your webcam,
Mm-hmm.
after that, with all the bells and whistles, if you're using Podpage for your website, and if you're paying for Podmatch to get your guests,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're paying for Buzzsprout, and then your recording platform, whatever that is, it's maybe $50 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you can pull out of your Social Security check and have a really good time and stay connected and do things with folks. But if you have to hire someone, there are great podcast production folks out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. So, Andy, what do you see yourself doing in like, okay, we know a birthday is eventually coming up with another zero after
Big
it.
7-0.
The big 7-0.
Whoop, whoop.
When I turned 60, I did have a friend of mine. She's actually was at the pole studio I was taking pole from, who had like, a t-shirt little company she would do. And I had her make me a shirt that said 60 is sexy.
Yes.
So then I outgrew that because, well, okay, we're getting to the end of that. So I'm trying to get a hold of her again. I want her to make me another one that is 70 is sexy.
There you go. That's aging out loud and proud, everybody.
Yep.
There you go, Cheryl. That's the perfect example.
Hmm. So, what else could you share with the listeners when they're okay? They might be listening to this and they're saying, well, yeah, okay, well, it's easy for Andy because she's very outgoing and she's an extrovert, and, Cheryl's a ninja, she could do it. But, how do you encourage people to be able to stand up to that anti aging or to turn
Just
that around and say, hey, And I did this actually
Yeah.
before I left Denver. I remember telling some of the ninjas that I was training with, because a lot of them were much, much younger than me. There were a few women much, much younger than me. And I would say, I want you to remember this when you're 69.
Right. Right. Well, I interview people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I have to tell you, I am so inspired and so excited,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the 70s. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, wow. They're just, everybody who's in their 70s can't get over how great it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because we're unburdened by a lot of things. Maybe a few might have an elder parent around, but most likely not. Your kids are off and running, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so it's all about you. What do you want to
Mm-hmm.
do? So I have this great book, and if you're watching the video, it's right behind me. It's called "Don't Retire, Rewire." It's by Jerry Sedler. Oh my gosh! If you were seeing, well, I don't know what to do. Like, what thread do I pull on? Where do I begin? Read that book. She does a terrific job at taking you through quizzes and questions to help you pull back the layers of, well, what am I passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
What am I, what would be a purposeful adventure for me? Because we as humans need a reason to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our purpose. And ideally, you want to have your ikigai, right? If you're in a Japanese ninja, you understand the four circles. What's my vocation? What's my passion? What can I get paid for? And I can't remember the fourth one right now.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, bringing all together an ideal situation. But you don't know what you don't know, so you've got to uncover and discover.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, and then again, bringing the grace in, I might try this for a little while. I heard this great story. This woman had a very full career. She retires, and people said, "Your gardens are so beautiful. You need to help people with your gardens." She's like, "Yeah, that's a great idea." Came up with the whole business model for it, went out, started to do that. And she went, "My God, do I hate this? This is just awful. I'm alone all the time. People fight with me over the plants that they put in, then they end up killing them. This is not rewarding." And so she said, "Okay, I'm done with that. What's next?" That's the attitude you have to do. Like, you are a scientist in a lab and you're experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you might really enjoy doing something for a few years and you're like, "Yeah, I'm done with that. Next chapter."
Mm-hmm.
Turn the page, try something new,
Mm-hmm.
because we are always becoming, we're always evolving, right, Cheryl, into something else. And also, as we age, our physical, body may not be showing up the way
Mm-hmm.
we'd like it to. And again, a lot of times that's DNA, a lot of times that's injuries that in the past, whatever it is. I had this one woman in the show, one eye, one leg. It didn't matter. She was running this great company and doing great things that were right for her. I interviewed Judith Kernick, who talked about the energy portfolio that we have after the age of 65 and how we need to honor what we want to put our energy into and what energy we have
Mm-hmm.
during the day, because sometimes there's just not enough caffeine for that. Like, before we could push our way through, as your body ages, your brain too will need time to rest. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can still have a ton of fun and a great impact at 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week. You can manage that. You can set up your days for that. So but as far as where am I, where do I see myself in the future? I have no idea. My whole life has been allowing the divine to show and lead the way for me and how it wants me to express myself in the world. I find that if I am an active participant, but not trying to control, I am much happier.
Mm-hmm. That's very well put. Yes. Yeah. Because oftentimes some of us who are a little bit ambitious have a tendency to want to run everything, and it doesn't
Well,
work that
and
way.
and I find that I didn't know that I'd be talking about this. I certainly never would have predicted New England Podcasters Group, which is one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life, being in community, intergenerational community, where I have good friends who are 40 and 30 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
I could not have put that on a vision board in a million years. What I did know is that I wanted to feel community. I wanted to have conversation. I wanted to have connection. I wanted to have celebration, me with my clappers. And I, That's what I wanted. I wanted to feel that, but I didn't know how that was going to look. And it's the same with all the businesses I have had. I never planned to ever be an entrepreneur, and I never planned any of the businesses that I had.
So, just for the people who are watching this on YouTube and watching the video, pull up the clappers again. One more time.
Oh, these are my clappers. So when I started doing live streaming, I knew I had to entertain. I've got that. I've got my little money thing here. And, I needed to have some entertainment for the live viewers. Well, when I launched the New England Podcasters Group, I thought, what would help a networking to help people build community? And I know from decades of networking that people show up with their networking armor, right?
Mm, hmm.
And a little more in the proper. And I said, okay, I'm handing out clappers, first event, and we meet every second Saturday of the month. And I said, I'm going to hand these out because these make it playful. These are silly. And I would look around the room and everybody like, yay, because we would introduce ourselves, right? We'd have a quick huddle. What's your name? Where in New England do you live? What's the name of your podcast? Or how are you serving the podcast industry? And after everybody would speak, everybody would be like, yay. And it just lifts the energy up in the room and it's playful. And all of a sudden, people are letting down their masks and their armors and they're like bringing their genuine self because they think, well, shoot, if this gal's having us use clappers, I can chill out here. There's no expectations of me to be anything but myself. And so that's how I got going on the clappers.
Okay, so I have to ask you, where do you get them? Because, as I told you, I'm new in this little town in Missouri, and I'm part of a writers group.
Oh,
And
great.
oh yes, it's a lovely little group. Again, community,
Yeah,
I
sure.
feel
I
your pain
love
type thing.
that.
And I'm going to be facilitating one of the meetings, I think in next month or the month after that. And I thought, that would be a really great idea because I don't know if you hang around writers very much. You get everything. Some of them are just incredible introverts. They don't want to speak at all. And, others are a little bit more loose, but it was like that would help loosen them up. And especially since they don't know me as
Right.
much as, or
Right.
yet.
But
So I might
look
do
at them
that.
having the courage to use the written word. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Amazon is where I get mine. So,
Okay.
and I take them to conferences with me and hand them out.
I bet you do.
And then a
Good.
speaker, when a speaker's talking to an audience and you're like, yay, they're like, oops, sorry, I hit my mic. They're like, oh, that feels so good. Thank you.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so Andy, where can the listeners find you? How can they connect with you if they wanted to get a hold of you? Maybe, provide the services you provide and how you could help them if somebody's interested in starting a podcast. Anything that you have that you would like to share with the listeners, now is the time.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And you have been the most extraordinary host. I have loved
Oh,
every
thank
minute of
you.
this conversation and am truly honored to be here chatting with you and with your audience. Ande Lyons, Andelyons. I'm everywhere on all the platforms. You can check out the episodes of Don't Be Caged by Your Age by visiting don'tbecagedbyyourage.com. You can find my fun reels on TikTok under Don't Be Caged by Your Age, where I'm always showing people doing wild and amazing things after the age of 65. And if you're curious about podcasting, follow New England Podcasters Group on Instagram. We are having so much fun. And also visit newenglandpodcasters.group, the website, and see what's happening there. I also have an online pod garden. It's a community podcast garden for podcasters to stay in touch in between our in person events. And we also have a Zoom room for our monthly in person events where we always have a featured speaker. We're all about upping our game. And I would offer any of your listeners a guest pass to join us via Zoom, or if they're in the New England area, come on over. I have a free pass for you.
Excellent. One more question for you. How's the weather right now?
It has been a brutal winter.
Yeah.
We were so spoiled for 5 years, but we were getting a little drought like conditions as a
Right.
result.
Right.
We just had, it's just been nonstop, including a blizzard, nor'easter, but it's been nonstop snow, freezing weather, and we just had a snowstorm last night, and we got another one coming tomorrow night, and it's that lovely combo of snow and ice. So I'm telling you, this has left me a little grumpy this year, I have to tell you.
Okay. Well, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great, because I've just lost my ears. Andy, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You are just a joy to talk to speak with. And thank you for all of your wonderful tips, your advice, and sharing your time and your energy with us. It's been awesome.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so grateful to be here. And I'm
Everybody, thank you
waving.
so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Please share this episode with everybody you know, especially people who are in the best time of their lives, like the late 50s, early 60s, late 60s, entering the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond, because we can live a healthy, vibrant, gratifying, interesting life at every age, and we get to contribute our skills, our history, our passions with the upcoming generation. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.